In this episode of ABC's The 80s, we take a look at a fun private investigator show, a great sci-fi construction toy line, and a great and fun action-adventure movie that could have been so much more. So, see ya after the jump. Hello and welcome to ABC's of the 80s. This is the show where I take a brief encyclopedia-like look at some of the great media from the 1980s. I always hit you with 3 items of the same letter, and in this episode we're going to look at the letter R. First on the list is a TV show called Riptide. Riptide was a show that ran from January 3rd, 1984 to August 22nd of 1986 on NBC. The series was created by Frank Lupo and Stephen J. Cannell, and produced by Cannell Productions. Lupo and Cannell had writing and creating credits for such shows as Battlestar Galactica, Magnum P.I., BJ and the Bear, Greatest American Hero, A-Team, Wise Guy, Werewolf, and Hunter, among other things. Originally a mid-season replacement, Riptide debuted as a 2-hour TV movie in early 1984. In the show, Perry King and Joe Penny play Cody Allen and Nick Ryder, 2 former Army buddies who decide to open the Riptide Detective Agency in Los Angeles. Realizing that computers and technology play a major role in many investigations, they recruit the help of Murray Boz Basinski, a brilliant but nerdy scientist and computer hacker whom they meet while serving in the military. The team operate out of Cody's boat, the Riptide, moored at Pier 56 at King Harbor Marina. The men have several other tools in their fight against crime and injustice. These include Murray's robot, the Roboz, Nick's aging Swarovski S-58T helicopter, the Screaming Mimi, which Nick occasionally used for his sideline business, aerial harbor tours, and Cody's speedboat, the Ebb Tide. Like most private investigator shows of this era, Riptide's characters became superheroes for hire, if you will. They always fought for the little man, and they always did what was right. The show focused on them taking out local mobsters, and in some sensitive topics, they took on corruption among the U.S. Army. Also with a lot of shows from this era, there were flashbacks that showed their service during the Vietnam War and how it reflected on their lives now. This would play into a lot of the different episodes that showed government corruption, high-level cover-ups, and black ops of corporate America. One of the things I remember most about Riptide, other than the Screaming Mimi, I mean, who could forget a pink helicopter, but was Roboz. What a neat designed robot. He kind of had an insect-type look with his black eyes and elongated snout. It was just a neat designed robot, and I'll always remember it. That's the one thing that I'll always take with me from this show. Perry King and Joe Penny were great in their roles, and they worked well with each other. This is a show that I remember rushing home to see in the evenings, and it was one that I always flocked to USA Network for the repeats. So this was R for Riptide. Next is the toy line Robotix. Robotix is a line of toy motorized modular construction sets used to construct robots, robotic vehicles, and machines, and often included action figures. Robotix toys were first marketed by Milton Bradley Corporation from 1984 until 1986. In 1985, a cartoon series was made, but we'll talk about that at another time. Just to give you a little background, though, the TV series followed the conflict between the peaceful Protectons and the warmongering Terracors on the alien world of Scarlor. Getting caught between the middle of this war are a group of humans. It was produced by Sunbow and Marvel Production, and it was part of the Super Sunday cartoon block. It was known to have a considerable amount of violence, even to the human characters. Robotic parts, despite originating in the United States, used the metric system of measurement for their pieces. For example, they sell 3 arm pieces: arm 50mm, arm 75mm, and arm 100mm. These parts connect using a male-female attachment system, where each connection is in the shape of an octagon. The toy was very high quality for its time, and it featured heavy plastics with rounded corners. The higher-end pieces within this toy line came with remote controls. These were accomplished with a large box with one-button pushes for forward, back, left, right, and so on. Some of the pieces were very large and required a lot of construction. The thing I remember most about this toy line was the size. This was something I never really got, and I believe it had a high price point, so that was probably one of the things. It kind of priced itself out of my world. But I remember the commercials, and I remember how great the giant dinosaur looking ones looked. They were just neat. They were just cool, and they were educational. So R is for Robotix. Now for a new segment of ABCs of the 80s. And, well, let me just let the intro do the talking. Yo, Joe! That's right, we're going to take a look at a G.I. Joe or Cobra character every episode. And the thing is, there were so many G.I. Joe and Cobra, they probably covered the whole alphabet. I might have to look into that. Anyway, with the letter R, that brings us to Recondo. Born in Wheaton, Wisconsin, Daniel M. LeClaire is completely in his element while in the jungle. While other troopers might consider the jungle to be hostile and unforgiving, Recondo views it as a friend, and anyone who breaks in is an intruder. Even when outnumbered by enemies, Recondo often finds a way to use the dangers of the jungle against them. His vast experience has earned him a role as an instructor at the Jungle Warfare Training Center. Recondo was a great character, great design, great action figure, just a great way to kick off this new segment. Now let's take a look at a fun little action-adventure flick that nowadays has its fair share of controversy, and that is Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins. Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins is a 1985 American action-adventure film directed by Guy Hamilton. The film featured Fred Ward, Joel Grey, Wilford Brimley, and Kate Mulgrew. The character is based on The Destroyer pulp paperback series originally written by Warren Murphy and Richard Sapir, in which the character of Remo Williams appeared in. There were 150 books within the series. The movie was the only adaptation featuring the character Remo Williams, and fared poorly in theaters. It received mixed reviews from critics, although it did earn Joel Grey a Golden Globe nomination, and the film was nominated for an Oscar for its makeup effects, which were totally racist. But we'll get into that in a second. In the movie, Fred Ward plays Sam Macon, a tough Brooklyn, New York City street cop and Vietnam-era Marine Corps veteran. He is unwillingly recruited as an assassin for a secret United States organization called CURE. The recruitment is through a bizarre method. They fake his death, and he is given a new face and a new name. Funny side note, the name is taken from the name and location of the manufacturer of the bedpan that is in Macon's hospital room. After his face is surgically altered, he starts training to be a human killing machine by an aged, derisive, and impassive Korean martial arts master, Chun. Though Remo's training is extremely rushed by Chun's standards, Remo learns such skills as dodging bullets, running on water, and, as the movie shows, running over wet cement. Chun teaches Remo the Korean martial art named Sinanju. Remo's instruction is interrupted when he is sent by CURE to investigate a corrupt weapons procurement program within the U.S. Army. It is at the Army base that Remo meets Kate Mulgrew's character, Major Rainer Fleming, who is also investigating the weapon procurement program after stumbling upon it. Orion Pictures, who had launched the James Bond series at United Artists, was open about their vision for the film, seeing it as the first in a series that would create a red, white, and blue collar Bond. They signed Ward to star in 3 movies in the envisioned series. Orion hired veterans of the Bond series to work on the film, English director Guy Hamilton and screenwriter Christopher Wood. The LA Times noted that Hamilton and Wood's end result, while downplaying the violence and uplifting the humor, have delivered a welcome and breezy alternative to the mayhem and genocide of Rambo and Commando. Hopes for the series were dashed when the box office results were disappointing, earning only $3.4 million in its first 4 days of release. Now back to that controversial, racist, whitewashing part that I mentioned before. On the casting of the white actor Joel Grey, who went through 4.5 hours of makeup every day to look like an elderly Korean, producer Joel Spiegel claimed, "We assumed, of course, that we would be using an Oriental actor. We couldn't find one, and then I thought of Grey." On a personal side note, it was a little weird to see what Joel Grey really looked like after watching Remo Williams. You get so accustomed to the character of Chun that when you see the actor Joel Grey, it really is weird. Now, the character is just so darn likable, and Joel Grey just portrays him in such a great and unracist manner that you kind of forget about how horrible it really is. Anyway, as a cool little piece of trivia, Fred Ward performed most of the stunts himself, including that awesome scene on the giant Ferris wheel. That scene was shot at Dino's Wonder Wheel, located at Dino's Wonder Wheel amusement park at Coney Island. But unfortunately, not everybody liked Fred Ward. In an interview, screenwriter Christopher Wood expressed his opinions of why the film did not succeed at the box office. He questioned the choice of Fred Ward, whom he thought was a good enough actor, but not leading man material, saying he thought Ed Harris, who was up for the role, might have had more appeal. He went on to say, "I had also written a slam-bang action finale that was cut for budgetary reasons, and that didn't help." In another little piece of interesting factoids, the title song, Remo's theme, What If, written and sung by Styx member Tommy Shaw, was not included on the soundtrack album. Shaw released the song as a solo artist on his 1985 album, What If. Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, opened on October 11, 1985, and earned less than $3.4 million in its opening weekend, ranking number 4 at the United States box office. By the end of its run, the film grossed $14 million in the domestic box office. Growing up, I watched Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins all the time. To me, unlike Mr. Wood, I thought Fred Ward was a great leading man. He has an everyday blue-collar likability that has carried him throughout his career. I mean, he's what's awesome about Tremors. Well, and Michael Gross, who ended up sailing that franchise into the sunset. But Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins is one of my personal favorites, and it's R for Remo Williams. The Adventure Begins. Anyway, thanks for watching. This has been ABCs of the 80s, and it was the letter R. If you liked what you saw, give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment, because I love reading them and I love getting back to you all. And if you're new, hit the subscribe and hit that little bell there, because then you'll be notified whenever there's a new episode. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, keep being rad and stay dorky.